As I said earlier in this debate, I agree that working to shore up our hard infrastructure is a worthy cause. Investing in infrastructure the right way is a wise investment in America's future and in our long-term competitiveness. But that's not what we're being asked to vote on here. Rather, we have a package with some infrastructure, good for our economy, yet it's riddled with big government and massive deficit spending, over $250 billion in the hole. And we want to rush through this as quickly as possible? There's a right way and a wrong way to pursue noble goals. And let's be clear, the Democrat leadership has tied this infrastructure bill to their effort to use their 50-vote reconciliation process to fundamentally move America toward Western Europe-style socialism, which, as anyone can see today, brings with it limited opportunity, less innovation, crushing taxes, a bloated government bureaucracy, and cradle-to-grave government dependency. Right on cue, Democrats have introduced a $3.5 trillion part of the plan this morning, and the Democrat leader promised that the Senate will turn to it just as soon as this bill is passed. I wish this wasn't the case. And all it would take for it not to be the case is for just one of my Democrat colleagues to say that they won't support the $3.5 billion part of this plan. I'm still hopeful, but I remain concerned given the statements by Democrats, just like my colleague who just spoke a minute ago from Oregon. President Biden and Speaker Pelosi have been clear that this bipartisan deal on infrastructure won't become law unless all of the socialist big government items that got excluded from this so-called Track 1 infrastructure deal are later tacked onto it in Track 2 of their plan. The Democrat leader is saying this quite clearly, using the consistent refrain of a two-track plan. They're doing this because the far left has pushed the Democrats over the edge. Whether the subject is court packing, election takeovers, or government dependency, it's clear that the far left is calling the shots in the Democrat Party today. Sadly, Democrats view this infrastructure bill as an important tool to advance the far left's agenda. Democrat leaders have promised to link it to trillions of dollars more in government taxing, spending, and dependency programs that this body will take up later this week. This smoke and mirrors charade is the kind of thing that makes Americans shake their heads. I've negotiated deals my whole career, and often what's negotiated out of a deal is just as important as what's in it. There's not a deal if at the last minute the other side uses a side deal or a different program to put everything in it that you never wanted. That's why, when we consider this infrastructure bill, we must also look to the multi-trillion-dollar tax and spend path to socialism that the Democrat leaders have promised will be part of the total package. So, members of this body and the American people need to listen carefully to what's expected to be in this second part of the plan, and try not to let your jaw hit the floor in the process. Just listen to what Democrats are promising to stuff into this reconciliation bill. It will enable the Green New Deal. It will crush the American fossil fuel industry. Never mind the fact that the industry is continuing to become ever more industry clean on its own. This will cost millions of American jobs. It will sacrifice the energy independence we've already achieved, and it will make us more dependent on foreign adversaries. Ultimately, Democrats would rather placate the far left's near religious fervor for government-subsidized electric cars and windmills, even if it means hollowing out American communities that provide our energy independence today. And they'll jeopardize our national security in the process. It's a great deal for the green energy lobby, which supports Democrat politicians, but it's a terrible deal for our nation and for our national security. It will drastically increase taxes on job creators, which will cost untold number of jobs and reduce wages. Get ready to see more jobs shipped out of the United States and into the welcoming arms of China. Don't worry, though. Democrats are proposing to create a civilian climate corps that will hire some of the people who lose their jobs. To do what? Proselytize on the virtues of clean energy? It will impose one of the largest ever tax increases on American capital, resulting in America having one of the highest tax rates on investment and capital in the industrialized world. Capital investment creates new jobs and innovation, and this will crush that process in America. It will expand the death tax that Americans must pay on savings and property of their loved ones that pass away. It will make it much harder for small businesses and farms to pass on to the next generation. It will move America closer to a European socialist model for health care, with less choice, longer wait times, and less quality. If we've learned anything during the coronavirus pandemic, it's that we have the greatest healthcare system and healthcare workers in the world. The last thing we need to do is try to make our healthcare system weaker. It will nullify the state right-to-work laws and ensure American workers don't have a choice but to submit to union bosses. It's impossible to say how many good-paying jobs this will cost states like Tennessee, states that have experienced enormous growth and prosperity in recent decades by passing laws that put workers first, by allowing them to choose whether or not they want to join a union. But union dues are used to fund Democrat political campaigns. So rather than make unions earn the support of workers, Democrats want to mandate it. At a time when American small business are desperately looking for employees, this legislation will provide even more incentives for American workers not to work. Small businesses and American consumers will suffer as a result. It will provide more handouts to teachers' unions, who've refused to open schools in much of the country for the last year and a half. Teachers' unions provide a great windfall benefit to Democrat political campaigns. It will provide more handouts to green unions and green energy interests, which conveniently fund the campaigns of Democrat politicians. Are you noticing a trend yet? In addition to taking more American taxpayers' hard-earned dollars, it will be debt-financed and not paid for, at least not by our generation. It may be convenient for today's politicians, but our children and our grandchildren will be left footing the bill. It will be so large that it will likely be beyond the capacity of Congress to even oversee it, to prevent the waste, fraud, and abuse that are sure to come. We should all be deeply concerned. Ultimately, this package is designed to create a permanent state of government dependency and reliance for everything from jobs to your choice of doctors to fueling your car. That way, you'll have to turn to the institution Democrats have captured most, government, and the unelected bureaucracy that controls it for virtually everything. In the short term, this is a reckless, multi-trillion-dollar step towards socialism. Again, several trillion dollars. That's 13 digits, a number that many calculators don't even have room for. This step will likely add further fuel to already rampant inflation. As we know, inflation is a hidden tax on all Americans, cutting into our savings, decreasing real earnings, and hurting our retirees most of all. Over the longer term, this path to socialism will slow job creation and productivity. It will reduce wages. It will ship jobs overseas. It will harm small businesses and workers, freeze investment right here in America. Drastically increased taxes will hobble innovative industries and technologies in which America was poised to lead. And Green New Deal mandates and regulations will crush industries where we currently do lead, such as the energy industry. With this massive expansion of inefficient government, bureaucratic involvement in our day-to-day lives will increase. It's as if Democrats' goal is to emulate the totalitarian central planners of the Chinese Communist Party. Rather than competing against China by creating a free, market-driven environment for innovation and job creation, which, by the way, is how we won the Cold War, Democrats seem to want to copy China's model. This tax and spend spree by Democrats will also burden our children and grandchildren with even more debt. Sadly, this isn't a pig in the python moment, and the harmful effects of this spending spree will last for generations. America is nearly $30 trillion in debt. $30 trillion. $30 trillion is significantly more than the total value of what our economy produces annually. And as Democrats impose policies that will limit economic growth and productivity, our ability to pay our debts will become much more difficult. And as the debt payments we owe continue to increase and become a larger and larger share of the annual federal revenue pie, we're going to leave our children with some really tough choices. So while I support hard infrastructure and working to find a right way to invest in it. Joining at the hip with a vision for America as a socialist utopia isn't it. The stakes are too high, and it's time to get serious about the path we're heading down. We must think beyond today and our short-term interest. We need to stop endangering our children's and our grandchildren's future while we still can, by getting our spending under control and developing a plan for paying down our debt, not by making it far worse. This multi-trillion-dollar path to socialism threatens the future of our country. It not only threatens to leave our children with an unpayable debt, but it also limits their ability to pay it off by smothering our economy with massive government bureaucracy that stifles the private sector innovation that has, until now, led the world. America has always been a beacon of hope to the world because we are exceptional. We've provided more freedom, opportunity, and prosperity than any other nation. We've been proud of this exceptionalism and have carefully safeguarded it through generations. The strength of America is our unique system, our spirit, our work ethic, our companion, the communities we create. This multi-trillion-dollar plan, which increases government control and decreases freedom and opportunity, threatens this system at our core. Our government exists to preserve the freedoms that allow the American people and our communities to flourish, not to control the American people. And the American people will flourish if permitted to do so. In this sense, the only thing that can stop America is America's government, by limiting our own people's opportunity and our prosperity. I'm asking my colleagues to fight to ensure that the America that we know endures for our children. The greatest generation gave us the most just and prosperous country in the history of the world, the country that won World War II and then the Cold War. And we must fight to preserve it, not throw it away. Because the President and Democrat leaders have bound this infrastructure bill to a plan that will dramatically weaken America and reduce opportunity and prosperity for our people, I will be casting a no vote and urge my colleagues to do the same. Madam President, I yield the floor.